Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UFS Discovery. The ship moved slowly through space toward the Kepler system. It was a routine mission, or so he thought. His crew was mixed with humans and aliens from different planets across the galaxy. They were on their way to a diplomatic meeting that could change everything. The year was 2387. Humanity had joined the Galactic Federation only 30 years ago. It was still new and exciting for humans to work alongside creatures from other worlds. Jake had served in space for 15 years, but he still felt amazed when he looked at his alien crew members. Commander Lisa Barnes walked onto the bridge. She was Jake's second in command and his most trusted officer. Lisa had short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She held a data pad in her hands. "Captain, we're getting close to New Geneva Station," she said. "The Federation. Council meeting starts in 2 hours." Jake nodded. "Good. Any word on what this emergency meeting is about? Nothing official?" But our communications officer picked up some strange chatter. The aliens seem worried about something. Entered the bridge from the science lab. She was the ship's expert on alien life forms. Amy was young, but brilliant. She had studied alien biology for years and could speak 12 different alien languages. "Captain, I've been monitoring the alien crew members," Amy said. "They're acting strange, more nervous than usual." Jake frowned. "Strange how?" "Well, our Andromedon science officer Kickstall hasn't eaten in 2 days. That's not normal for his species. And the Vorthan engineers keep whispering to each other in their native language." The Discovery docked with New Geneva Station 3 hours. Later, the station was huge, bigger than most Earth cities, floated in space like a metal planet. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked at its ports. Jake, Lisa, and Amy walked through the station's corridors. The place buzzed with activity. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the halls. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or rolled. The diversity never stopped amazing Jake. They entered the main council chamber. It was a massive room with seats arranged in circles. Each species had their own section. The human section was small compared to others. Humanity was still the new kid in this galactic neighborhood. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthan species stood at the center podium. Zethkar looked like a walking crystal formation. His body sparkled under the chamber lights. His voice echoed strangely when he spoke. "Fellow beings of the Federation," Zethkar began. "We have gathered today to discuss the recent discoveries in the Outer Rim territories. Our scout ships have found evidence of abandoned weapons facilities." The chamber was quiet. Hundreds of aliens listened carefully. Jake noticed that many seemed tense. "The facilities appear to be old manufacturing sites," Zethkar continued. "We believe they once produced hydro weapons." The reaction was immediate and shocking. Every non-human in the chamber went completely silent. Then chaos erupted. Aliens began talking loudly in their native languages. Some stood up and backed away from the podium. Others made sounds that Jake had never heard before. The Rigelian delegate, a tall blue creature with 4 arms actually, fell backward off his seat. 2 Centaurian representatives got up and walked quickly toward the exit. Their faces showed pure terror. Jake looked at Lisa and Amy. They were as confused as he was. The human delegates around them seemed equally puzzled. "What just happened?" Lisa whispered. Amy shook her head. "I have no idea. I've never seen aliens react this way to anything." Ambassador Zethkar tried to restore order. "Please, fellow beings, remain calm. We are only discussing the discovery, not the weapons themselves," but his words made things worse. More aliens began leaving the chamber. The few who stayed looked like they wanted to run, but were too scared to move. Jake stood up. "Excuse me, Ambassador Zethkar, could you explain what hydro weapons are?" The human delegation is not familiar with this term. Every alien eye in the chamber turned to look at Jake. Their expressions ranged from surprise to horror. It was as if Jake had just asked about something so terrible that even speaking of it was dangerous. Quotes, Tal. The Discovery's Andromedan science officer was sitting in the crew section. Jake saw him go completely rigid. His normally calm demeanor disappeared. For the first time since Jake had known him, Kickstall looked afraid. Ambassador Zethkar's crystal body dimmed. You do not know of hydro weapons? No, Jake replied. We don't. Whispers filled the chamber. Aliens spoke in hushed tones to each other. Jake caught fragments of translated conversation. Words like impossible and how can they not? No, and are they serious drifted through the air? A draconian delegate who looked like a walking lizard stood up. Captain Morrison, hydro weapons are the ultimate terror of the galaxy. They are weapons so terrible that entire civilizations have been wiped out by them. What makes them so dangerous? Amy asked. The question caused another wave of fearful murmurs. The draconian delegate sat back down quickly, as if he had said too much. We do not speak of their methods, Zethkar said. To do so might give others ideas. All you need to know is that they are forbidden throughout the galaxy. The mere possession of hydro weapon technology is punishable by complete exile. Jake tried to get more information. But surely you can tell us something, if they're so dangerous. Shouldn't we know how to defend against them? There's no defense, a Vorthan engineer whispered from the crew section. When hydro weapons are deployed, you run. You run as far and as fast as you can. The meeting ended abruptly. Ambassador Zethkar dismissed the council without discussing any other business. Aliens fled the chamber like it was on fire. Within minutes, only the human delegation remained. Jake, Lisa, and Amy sat alone in the massive chamber. The silence was eerie after all the panic. Well, that was interesting, Lisa said. Amy pulled out her datapad. I'm going to research everything I can find about these hydro weapons. There has to be information somewhere. Jake nodded. Do that. And Lisa, I want you to quietly ask our alien crew members what they know. Something tells me we've stumbled onto something important. As they left the chamber, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that their simple diplomatic mission had just become something much more complicated. The fear he had seen in those alien eyes was real. Whatever hydro weapons were, they terrified species. That had conquered space travel and built galactic civilizations. But Jake was curious. He was human after all, and humans had a habit of poking at things that others feared. He had a feeling that humanity's ignorance of hydro weapons might be more significant than anyone realized. The Discovery undocked from New Geneva Station 6 hours later. As they flew back into open space, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered what secrets the galaxy was hiding from his species. 3 days passed after the council meeting. Captain Jake Morrison could not stop thinking about what happened. The fear in those alien eyes haunted him. He had never seen entire species panic like that before. Dr. Amy Chen worked day and night in her lab. She searched through every database the Discovery had access to. Most files about hydro weapons were either missing or heavily censored. The few records she found only had warnings like, classified beyond top secret and do not research under any circumstances. This is ridiculous, Amy muttered as she stared at her computer screen. How can something be so feared but have no real information about it? Commander Lisa Barnes entered the lab. She looked tired. Is any luck? Nothing useful. But I did find something interesting. There are references to a place called the Zarian System. It appears in several classified reports about hydro weapon incidents. Joined them in the lab. He'd been thinking about their next move. What do we know about this Zarian System? Amy pulled up a star chart. It's about 4 days from our current position. According to official records, it's been abandoned for over 300 years. No explanation given for why. That's suspicious, Lisa said. Systems don't just get abandoned without reasons. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Set course for the Zarian System. Lisa looked surprised. Captain, we have orders to return to Earth immediately. Command wants a full report on the council meeting. Command can wait. We need to understand what we're dealing with. If these hydro weapons are as dangerous as the aliens claim, humanity deserves to know the truth. The Discovery changed course and headed toward the Zarian System. The journey took 4 days. During that time, Jake noticed their alien crew members acting strangely. Ixtal barely left his quarters. The Vorthan engineers worked in complete silence. which was unusual for their normally chatty species. When they arrived at Zarian, the crew was shocked by what they found. The system had 5 planets, but 4 of them looked dead. Their surfaces were covered in strange crystal formations that sparkled in the light of the system's dying star. "Oh my God," Amy whispered, as she looked at the sensor readings. "These planets used to be inhabited. I'm detecting ruins of massive cities under those crystal formations." Jake ordered the ship to approach the 3rd planet. It had once been covered in oceans and continents, but now it looked like a giant jewel floating in space. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Rodriguez led the landing party. Sam was the Discovery's security chief and a former Marine. He was tough and fearless, exactly the kind of person you wanted exploring unknown dangers. With him went Amy, 2 human engineers named Pete Williams and Carol Davis, and a security team of 6 Marines. They landed near what sensors indicated was once a major city. The crystal formations were everywhere, reaching high into the sky like frozen waterfalls. The air was breathable, but had a strange metallic taste. "These crystals," Amy said, as she examined them with her instruments, "they're not minerals. Organic, or they used to be." Pete Williams ran his scanner over a crystal formation. "Doctor, I think these used to be living beings. The crystal structure follows biological patterns." The team moved deeper into the ruins. Under the crystal formations, they found the remains of buildings, vehicles, and technology. Everything was perfectly preserved but transformed into crystal. "Like an entire civilization was flash frozen," Carol observed. "But instead of ice, they turned into crystal." They found an underground facility that had somehow escaped the crystallization. Inside, they discovered something incredible. The walls were lined with recording devices and data storage units. Most importantly, they found what appeared to be a weapons laboratory. Amy connected her equipment to the alien data systems. It took hours to decode the information, but finally, she succeeded in accessing the records. "Guys, you need to see this," she called out. The team gathered around as Amy played back the recordings. The alien voices were translated by the Discovery's computer systems. What they heard made everything clear. The recordings told the story of a species called the Aquatic Dominion. They had developed weapons that used a clear liquid that was deadly to most forms of life. The liquid caused immediate breakdown of living cells in any creature that came into contact with it. They called them hydroweapons because the base component was a modified form of H2O, Amy explained. Water that had been changed at the molecular level to be toxic to carbon-based life forms. Sam frowned. "Water? The galaxy is terrified of weaponized water?" "Not just any water," Amy continued. These recordings showed dozens of different variations. Some attacked nervous systems. Others destroyed cell walls. Few caused total organ failure within seconds. Pete found manufacturing equipment in another room. He ran detailed scans and made a startling discovery. The technology isn't that complex. It's basically advanced chemistry applied to water molecules. The team spent 12 hours exploring the facility. They found weapon samples, manufacturing instructions, and test results. The Aquatic Dominion had created over 50 different types of hydroweapons before they mysteriously vanished. Amy made the most important discovery in the facility's final records. According to this, the Aquatic Dominion tested their weapons on themselves by accident. A containment breach released multiple hydroweapon variants into their atmosphere. "Is that what caused the crystallization?" Carol asked. "Yes. The different hydroweapons reacted with each other and created a chain reaction. Every living thing on the planet was turned into crystal within hours." Sam whistled low. "No wonder the galaxy is terrified of these things." But Amy had found something else, something that made her heart race with excitement and fear. "There's more." The records show that hydroweapons were tested on life forms from across the galaxy. Every single species they tested died within minutes of exposure. She paused and looked at her companions. "Every species except one." "Which one?" Pete asked. Amy pulled up the test results. "Humans, or rather a species with biology very similar to humans. The records call them aquatic adapted carbon forms from high water content worlds. The team stared at each other in amazement. Sam was the first to speak. Are you saying humans might be immune to these weapons? Some saying the test results suggest that species like humans who evolved on water-rich planets have natural resistance to hydro-weapon variants. Our cellular structure is different because we've adapted to live with water in ways that other species haven't. Carol shook her head. That's incredible. The galaxy's most feared weapons might be harmless to us.
Amy
Gathered samples of several hydro-weapon variants. She sealed them in special containers for transport back to the Discovery. We need to test this theory, but we have to be extremely careful. The team returned to their ship with evidence that would shake the galaxy. As they prepared to leave the Zarian system, Jake made another difficult decision. We're not reporting this to command yet, he announced to his senior staff. If we're right about human immunity, this information is too dangerous to trust to normal channels. Lisa understood his concern. If word gets out before we know for sure, it could cause panic across the galaxy. Or worse, Amy added. Someone might try to use this information for the wrong reasons. The Discovery left the Zarian system carrying secrets that could change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. As they traveled through space, Amy worked in her sealed laboratory, preparing to test whether humans truly were immune to the weapons that terrified the stars. Jake stood on the bridge. Looking out at the vast expanse of space, he knew that their Discovery would soon force humanity to make choices that could affect every living being in the galaxy. The question was whether they were ready for that responsibility. Dr. Amy Chen worked in her sealed laboratory for 3 days straight. She had samples of 12 different hydro-weapon variants from the Zarian system. Each sample was contained in a special isolation chamber that prevented any leaks. Captain Jake Morrison visited the lab every few hours. He was anxious to know the results, but understood that Amy needed time to work safely. Any progress? He asked during one visit. Amy looked up from her microscope. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but she seemed excited. I've run computer simulations on all 12 samples. The results are incredible, Jake. If my calculations are correct, these weapons should have minimal effect on human biology. Should have minimal effect is not the same as will have minimal effect, Jake pointed out. I know, that's why I want to run controlled tests, but I need permission from you first. Before Jake could answer, Commander Lisa Barnes rushed into the lab. Her face was pale with worry. Captain, we just received an emergency transmission from Federation Command. The hegemony has launched a massive attack on the border worlds. Jake felt his stomach drop. The hegemony was a ruthless empire from the outer rim of the galaxy. It had been threatening Federation territory for years. How bad is it? He asked. Bad. They've already taken 3 systems, but that's not the worst part. Lisa paused, her voice shaking slightly. They're using hydro weapons. The laboratory went completely silent. Amy dropped the sample container she was holding. Fortunately, it was empty. How many casualties? Jake asked quietly. Entire planets, Jake. The hegemony deployed hydro weapons against civilian populations. Billions of aliens are dead or fleeing. The Federation fleet is in full retreat. Amy sat down heavily in her chair. They can't fight back. No one can fight back against hydro weapons. Jake's mind raced. How long before they reach the core Federation worlds? At their current rate of advance, maybe 2 weeks. Admiral Korthas is calling for a complete evacuation of the inner systems. Jake made a decision that would change the course of the war. Set course for Federation Command immediately. Maximum speed. Jake, that will take us right into the war zone, Lisa warned. Exactly where we need to be. The Discovery raced through space toward Federation Command headquarters. During the journey, reports continued to arrive. The hegemony forces were advancing faster than anyone expected. Entire fleets were abandoning their positions rather than face hydro-weapon attacks. Amy continued her research during the trip. She ran every test she could think of without actually exposing humans to the weapons. Every result pointed to the same conclusion. The hydro weapons work by targeting specific cellular structures that exist in most alien life forms, she explained. To Jake and Lisa, but humans evolved differently. Our cells have natural defenses against these attacks because we evolved in a water-rich environment. Are you absolutely certain? Jake asked. Amy hesitated. As certain as I can be without human testing. Jake, if I'm wrong, whoever volunteers for testing could die. They arrived at Federation Command to find chaos. The massive space station was crowded with refugee ships from attacked worlds. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. The greatest military force in the galaxy was falling apart. Jake requested an immediate meeting with the command staff. To his surprise, they agreed instantly. Apparently, they were desperate for any help they could get. The war room was packed with senior officers from dozens of species. Admiral Korthas, a tall Centaurian with blue skin and silver hair, stood at the center of a holographic display, showing the advancing hegemony forces. The situation is hopeless, Admiral Korthas announced. We cannot fight an enemy that uses hydroweapons. Our only option is complete evacuation of threatened worlds. A Rigelian general spoke up. We could try to negotiate, perhaps offer them uninhabited systems in exchange for stopping the attacks. The hegemony doesn't negotiate, another officer replied. They want complete control of Federation space. Jake stood up. Every eye in the room turned to him. I may have a solution. Admiral Korthas looked skeptical. Captain Morrison, with respect, this is beyond anything humanity has experienced. These are hydroweapons. I understand that, sir. But I believe humans may be immune to hydroweapon effects. The room erupted in shocked voices. Aliens spoke rapidly in their native languages. Some looked hopeful. Others seemed to think Jake had lost his mind. It's impossible, a draconian colonel said. No species is immune to hydroweapons. Amy stepped forward. Actually, our research suggests otherwise. We've discovered that hydroweapons are essentially modified water designed to target alien cellular structures. Humans evolved on a water-rich planet and may have natural resistance. Admiral Korthas raised his hand for silence. Dr. Chen, are you proposing that humans can survive hydroweapon exposure? I'm proposing that we test the theory, Amy replied. Absolutely not, the Admiral said firmly. I will not authorize human testing with weapons that have killed billions. Jake had expected this reaction, and let me volunteer for an unofficial test. As captain of my ship, I take full responsibility. Jake, no, Lisa said quietly. Me do it. If something goes wrong, the Discovery still needs its captain. Before anyone could stop her, Amy walked to a sealed container she had brought to the meeting. I've prepared a sample of Type 3 hydroweapon, according to our records. This variant killed an entire Vorthan colony in less than an hour. The alien officers in the room backed away from the container. Some actually left the room. Admiral Korthas put on a protective suit. Dr. Chen, please reconsider, he pleaded. If you're wrong, you'll be dead in minutes. Amy looked at Jake and Lisa. They both nodded. She opened the container and poured a small amount of clear liquid into a glass. To everyone watching, it looked exactly like water. According to our analysis, it should taste slightly metallic and might cause minor stomach irritation in humans, Amy said.
Ow.
For any other species, it would cause immediate cellular breakdown and death. She raised the glass to her lips. Room was completely silent. Even the background hum of the space station seemed to fade away. Amy drank the entire glass in one gulp. The alien officers stared in horror. Some covered their eyes, expecting to watch her die. Others muttered prayers. In their native languages, Amy stood calmly for a moment, then made a face. It does taste metallic, and it's giving me a slight headache. But otherwise, I feel fine. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Amy remained healthy and alert. She even asked for a sandwich because the hydro weapon had made her hungry. The implications. Hit everyone in the room at the same time? Humans were immune to the galaxy's most feared weapons. Admiral Korthas sat down heavily. This changes everything. Jake nodded.
Ow.
We can fight the hegemony. We can go where no other species can go and engage them directly. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Rodriguez, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. Are you suggesting we send human forces against hydroweapon attacks? I'm suggesting we end this war, Jake replied. The hegemony's greatest advantage just became useless against us. Within hours, Plans were being made for the first human-led assault against hegemony forces. Jake was promoted to admiral and given command of all human forces in the war zone as they prepared for battle. Amy continued testing different Hydra weapon variants on volunteer human crew members. Each test confirmed their immunity. Some variants tasted bad, others caused mild discomfort. But none were fatal to humans. The galaxy was about to discover that their newest members were immune to their oldest fear. The tide of war was about to turn, and humanity would lead the charge into battle against weapons that had terrorized the stars for centuries. Jake stood on the bridge of his ship, now designated as the flagship of the human defense fleet. Tomorrow, they would prove that humans could drink the galaxy's nightmares and ask for seconds. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Defiance, his new flagship. 2 weeks had passed since the test that proved human immunity to hydro weapons. The Federation had worked around the clock to organize humanity's first major military operation. The Human Hydro Defense Corps was born out of necessity. Every available human ship and crew had been gathered into a single fleet. Jake commanded 57 vessels, including military ships, converted cargo haulers, and even some civilian craft that volunteered for the mission. "Admiral, we're approaching the Desha system," reported Captain Lisa Barnes from the UFS Resilience. Her ship flew alongside the flagship as part of the main assault group. Desha Prime had been one of the first worlds to fall to the hegemony. 2 million Deshan aliens had died when hydro weapons were deployed against their cities. The survivors had fled, leaving behind a world covered in toxic clouds that made it impossible for Federation forces to retake. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're proving to the galaxy that the age of hydro weapon terror is over." Major Tony Garcia led the ground assault team aboard his transport ship. Tony was a tough Marine who had volunteered immediately when he learned about the mission. With him were 200 human soldiers, all equipped with standard gear and a lot of courage. "Major Garcia, you have permission to begin your approach," Jake said. Tony's transport ship descended toward the ship Prime. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship passed through thick clouds of hydro weapons that had been floating there for weeks. The alien crew members who had volunteered to help wore full environmental suits. The humans wore nothing special. "How does it look down there, Major?" Jake asked over the radio. "Like flying through a light fog, sir," Tony replied. "My men are reporting some eye irritation from the Type 7 variant, but nothing serious." The transport landed in what used to be the capital city. Hegemony forces had set up a base there, protected by massive hydroweapon generators that created deadly barriers around their position. Tony and his Marines stepped off the transport directly into a cloud of concentrated hydroweapons. For any other species, it would have meant instant death. For the humans, it was like walking through morning mist. "This is weird," said Sergeant Bill Turner as he checked his equipment. "I can taste metal in the air, but otherwise, I feel fine." "Corporal," Nancy White laughed. "My grandmother's cooking was more dangerous than this stuff." The hegemony defenders were not prepared for what they saw. Their sensors showed human soldiers walking calmly through hydro weapon concentrations that should have killed them instantly. Several hegemony officers actually rubbed their eyes, thinking their equipment was malfunctioning. Tony led his team directly toward the enemy base. As they approached, the hegemony forces increased the hydro weapon output. The air became thick. With toxic vapor, the humans just kept walking. "Command, this is Major Garcia," Tony reported. "The enemy is panicking. They keep increasing their hydro weapon deployment, but it's not affecting my team at all." Back in space, Jake watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. "Excellent work, Major. Continue your advance." Captain Lisa Barnes was leading her own part of the operation. Her ship faced 3 hegemony cruisers that were using hydro weapon clouds as defensive shields. Standard Federation tactics would require ships to stay far away from such concentrations. "All power to forward shields," Lisa ordered. "We're going straight through." Her crew looked nervous, but they trusted their captain. The UFS Resilience flew directly into the hydro weapon cloud. Alien crew members sealed themselves in protected areas of the ship. The human crew members just put on breathing masks to avoid inhaling too much of the stuff. Captain, the hydro weapons are having no effect on our hull or systems, reported Chief Engineer Pete Williams. It's just making the view screen a bit cloudy. Lisa smiled. Then let's show these hegemony ships what happens when their ultimate weapon becomes useless. The Resilience emerged from the hydro weapon cloud directly in front of the surprised hegemony vessels. The enemy ships had never faced anyone willing to fly through such concentrations. They were completely exposed and unprepared for combat. Fire all weapons, Lisa commanded. The battle was over in minutes. The hegemony ships, which had been hiding behind their hydro weapon barriers, were destroyed before they could react properly. Similar scenes played out across the system as human ships flew through defensive concentrations that no other species would dare approach. Dr. Amy Chen was aboard the Defiance, monitoring the biological effects of hydro weapon exposure on human troops. She had volunteers from different units reporting their experiences. Corporal Davis, how are you feeling after 6 hours of exposure to Type 12 hydro weapons? She asked over the radio. A bit thirsty, Doc, came the reply. And I have a slight headache, but nothing worse than a mild hangover. Amy made notes on her datapad. Sergeant Johnson, you've been exposed to 4 different hydro weapon variants. Today? Any problems? The purple stuff tasted awful, Johnson replied. Made me want to brush my teeth. But I'm still standing and ready for more. The psychological effect on hegemony forces was devastating. Their most powerful weapons were being treated like minor inconveniences by human soldiers. Some hegemony units began surrendering without fighting when they saw humans approaching through hydro weapon barriers. Jake received reports from across the system. Admiral, the enemy is retreating from all positions, reported Colonel Sam Rodriguez, who was coordinating ground operations. We're seeing mass surrenders. Some hegemony officers are actually asking if we're demons. Demons who drink their nightmares. Jake replied with satisfaction. The victory at the Shah Prime was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, human forces launched similar operations across hegemony-occupied territory. Each battle followed the same pattern. The hegemony would deploy hydro weapons, expecting Federation forces to retreat. Instead, humans would advance through the toxic clouds and engage the surprised. Enemy word spread quickly through both Federation and hegemony space. The humans could not be stopped by hydro weapons. They drank the stuff like water and kept fighting. Captain Lisa Barnes led a space battle near the Rigel system, where hegemony forces had created the largest hydro weapon barrier ever seen. The toxic cloud was so thick that it blocked sensors and communications. Any ship entering it should have been destroyed instantly. All human ships, follow my lead, Lisa announced. We're going to fly straight through their barrier and hit them where they least expect us. 12 human ships entered the massive hydro weapon cloud. For 20 minutes, they flew blind through concentrations that would have sterilized entire planets. When they emerged on the other side, they found 50 hegemony vessels completely unprepared for battle. The enemy fleet was positioned for siege warfare, not ship-to-ship combat. Their weapons were pointed outward, expecting Federation forces to approach from outside the barrier. Instead, the humans appeared behind their lines. This is Captain Barnes to all hegemony vessels, Lisa broadcast. Surrender now, or we will demonstrate why your ultimate weapons don't work on us anymore. Half the hegemony fleet surrendered immediately. The other half tried to fight but were quickly overwhelmed by human ships that could maneuver freely through hydro weapon concentrations. Within 6 weeks of the first human operation, the tide of war had turned completely. Hegemony forces were retreating across the galaxy. Their strategy of terror through hydro weapons had become useless against an enemy that treated those weapons like mild irritants. Jake received a message from Admiral Corthaz at Federation Command. Admiral Morrison, the hegemony is requesting peace negotiations. They want to discuss terms for ending the war. What terms are they offering? Jake asked. Complete withdrawal from all Federation territory. They're also willing to surrender their hydro weapon stockpiles to human forces for disposal. Jake looked out at the stars from his bridge. In just 2 months, humanity had gone from being the newest members of the Federation to being its primary military force against the galaxy's greatest threat. Tell them we'll consider their surrender, Jake replied. But first, we finish liberating every world they've attacked. No one should have to live in fear of weapons that humans can drink like morning coffee. The war was nearly over, but Jake knew that humanity's role in the galaxy had changed forever. They were no longer just explorers or diplomats. They had become the guardians against the darkness that had terrorized civilizations for centuries. The final battle of the war would take place at Dominion Prime, the capital world of the hegemony. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as his fleet approached the heavily defended planet. "Admiral, our sensors are picking up the largest hydro-weapon array ever constructed," reported Captain Lisa Barnes from her ship. "The entire planet is surrounded by overlapping fields of toxic vapor." Jake studied the tactical display. Dominion Prime was protected by hundreds of orbital platforms, each one pumping out different varieties of hydro-weapons. The planet itself was covered in a thick atmosphere of weaponized water that would kill any non-human life form instantly. "It's beautiful in a terrifying way," said Dr. Amy Chen, who was aboard the flagship to monitor the final operation. Created a planet-sized death trap. The hegemony had gathered their remaining forces for this last stand. Over 2,000 ships orbited Dominion Prime, all of them equipped with hydro-weapon systems. Their strategy was simple: create such massive concentrations of toxic vapor that nothing could survive long enough to reach the planet. Admiral Morrison came a transmission from the hegemony fleet. "This is Supreme Commander Vexstar. You have seen what our weapons can do. Turn back now, and we will allow your retreat." Jake activated his communication system. "Commander Vexstar, this is Admiral Morrison. We're here to end this war. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly. We cannot survive." "We have prepared for you," Vexstar replied. "We have concentrated enough hydro-weapons to sterilize entire star systems. Your immunity has limits." "Let's test that theory," Jake said calmly. The human fleet began its advance toward Dominion Prime. As they approached, the hegemony forces activated their ultimate defense. Massive clouds of hydro-weapons erupted from the orbital platforms. The space around the planet became thick with toxic vapor. From a distance, it looked like the planet was surrounded by colorful fog. Purple, green, blue, and yellow clouds mixed together in patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't deadly. "All ships maintain formation," Jake ordered. "Remember, we've faced this before." The first human ships entered the hydro weapon field. Immediately, the hegemony forces increased the concentration. They pumped out enough weaponized water to kill every living thing in the galaxy 10 times over. "How are our crews holding up?" Jake asked Amy. Amy checked her instruments. Some mild nausea from the Type 15 variants. "Several crew members are reporting that the green vapor tastes like vegetables. Otherwise, everyone is fine." Colonel Sam Rodriguez was leading the ground assault. His transport ships flew directly through the thickest concentrations of hydro-weapons toward the planet's surface. "This is incredible," Sam reported over the radio. "I can barely see through the viewport because of all the toxic vapor, but my Marines are playing cards in the back. One of them just asked if we can bottle this stuff to take home as souvenirs." The psychological effect on the hegemony was immediate and devastating. Their sensors showed human ships flying calmly through concentrations that should have killed everyone aboard. Some hegemony captains actually shut down their weapons, thinking they were malfunctioning. "Impossible, Supreme Commander," Vexstar whispered as he watched human ships emerge from clouds that no living thing should survive. "Our weapons have killed billions. How are they still alive?" Captain Lisa Barnes led a squadron of ships through the heaviest concentrations near the orbital platforms. Her crew was actually enjoying the experience. "Captain Chief Engineer Pete Williams here," came a voice from the engine room. "That orange vapor we just flew through actually smells pretty good. Like citrus fruit." "Focus on the mission, Pete," Lisa replied with a smile. "But I agree, it does smell nice." The human fleet reached the planet's surface without losing a single ship. Sam Rodriguez and his Marines landed in the capital city, walking through hydro-weapon concentrations that were thick enough to swim in. "Command, this is Colonel Rodriguez," Sam reported. were on the ground. The local atmosphere has about 12 different hydro weapon variants mixed together. My men are reporting various tastes and smells, but no serious effects. How thick is the concentration? Jake asked. Put it this way, sir. I just watched Sergeant Turner drink some of the local air from his helmet. He said it tasted like bitter coffee. The hegemony ground forces were in complete panic. They had prepared for a siege that could last years, protected by atmospheric concentrations that would kill any attacker. Instead, human soldiers were walking through their ultimate defense like it was a light morning mist. Jake decided to end the war with a dramatic gesture. All ships form up for the final approach to the hegemony command center. The human fleet flew in perfect formation through the heart of the hydro weapon defenses. They passed orbital platforms that were pumping out enough toxic vapor to poison solar systems. The humans flew through it all like they were on a parade route. Supreme Commander Vexstar, Jake broadcast to the enemy fleet. As you can see, your weapons have no effect on us. Surrender now, and no more lives need to be lost. The response came quickly. We surrender. All hegemony forces stand down immediately. The war ended not with a massive battle, but with the complete collapse of the enemy's will to fight. When their ultimate weapons became useless, the hegemony had nothing left. The surrender ceremony took place in the hegemony's main government building. Jake insisted that it be held in a chamber filled with hydro weapon vapor. Just to make the point clear, the human delegation sat comfortably at the negotiating table while hegemony leaders wore full environmental suits. Some of the human officers were actually sipping water during the ceremony, which terrified the hegemony representatives even more. The war is over, Jake announced. The hegemony will withdraw from all Federation territory and surrender there. Hydro weapons stockpiles to human forces for safe disposal. Supreme Commander Vexstar signed the surrender documents with shaking hands. How is this possible? He asked. Our weapons have terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Your weapons were designed to kill aliens, Amy explained. Humans evolve differently. What's poison to you is just flavored water to us. In the months that followed, humanity's role in the galaxy changed completely. The Federation established the Human Hydro Defense Corps as a permanent military unit. Anytime hydro weapons were discovered or used anywhere in the galaxy, human forces would respond. Jake was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of all hydro weapon response operations. Captain Lisa Barnes became the head of the Hydro Weapons Academy, where humans learned to identify and neutralize different weapon variants. Dr. Amy Chen founded the Galactic Water Safety Institute, where scientists from across the galaxy studied how to defend against hydro weapons. Her research led to new medical treatments for species that had been exposed to these weapons. The galaxy's greatest fear had become humanity's specialty. Human teams traveled to worlds that had been abandoned due to hydro weapon contamination. They cleaned up toxic sites that other species couldn't approach. Young humans began joining the Defense Corps in record numbers. They trained not just in combat, but in hydro weapon identification and safe consumption. The running joke among recruits was that they were the only military unit that drank their enemies. Ultimate weapons during lunch breaks. Jake often reflected on how quickly things had changed. 2 years ago, humanity had been the newest and least powerful member of the Federation. Now, they were the primary defense against the galaxy's oldest terror. The final irony was not lost on him. The galaxy's most feared weapons were essentially water, and humans had evolved on a planet covered in water. Their greatest strength came from the most basic necessity of life. As Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human ships patrol the space lanes, he smiled. The galaxy was safer now because humans could drink what others feared. Was perhaps the strangest military advantage in the history of warfare. But it was theirs. The legend spread throughout the galaxy of the species that turned nightmares into refreshments. Children of a dozen different species learned stories of the brave humans who drank the weapons that had once terrorized the stars. Humanity had found their place in the galaxy, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through a simple biological fact that they needed water to survive. Sometimes the greatest victories came from the most unexpected sources.